Blackhat here in Las Vegas. It's so great to be here in Las Vegas again. Oh my gosh, everybody's here. It's a packed environment. Although it's 100 degrees in Las Vegas, the cyber and the security world all coming together is so fun to have family and friends back together. As you know, I love to talk about threats and trends and issues that are happening in the world of cyber, national safety, security, and privacy. I always talk about as CSSP, and talk to industry luminaries who really understand some of the biggest threats and challenges that we have. And I have just an unbelievable guest today, a man that I've really looked up to, who's been doing some amazing things in the world of national safety, emergency systems, and being able to really help save lives and help us in an area of where physical and cyber could come together. Today, I have Michael Martin, who's the founder and CEO of RapidSOS. You're going to want to pay attention to this company, RapidSOS, one of the most interesting companies helping to overhaul our E911 systems, our emergency call centers around the world, not just in the US, but all over the world. Michael, thank you so much for joining. Can you tell a little bit about your background and then potentially just a few minutes on RapidSOS?
Yeah, well, it's great to be here today, and thanks again for having me in, Dave. And yeah, I mean, I'm basically grew up on a farm in rural Indiana and came to New York City to work in finance, like a lot of people, right after college. And I was walking home late one night and just had my welcome to New York City mugging experience, Dave, for lack of a better term. And to be honest, it's the first time I ever thought about calling 911. But it turns out this is this ubiquitous service that all of us rely on, in the United States and frankly, globally. And we think so little about it, except for in these moments. But the other thing I think we forget about is actually just the scale and magnitude of use of it. So last year, Dave, in the United States, there were approximately 250 million 911 calls. So statistically, that means that 3 out of 4 Americans called 911 last year, right? And it's, I'm standing there in Spanish Harlem and this dude's like kicking my butt. If you can imagine, it's like, you're supposed to like somehow like get out your phone, dial a number and like have this coherent conversation, right? Where you verbally articulate your name, your address, and exactly what, it's crazy, right? But like, this is this ubiquitous service we all rely on. So RapidSOS, we were founded to really partner with public safety to look at how could we transform this legacy analog-based infrastructure and upgrade all that to the digital age. And obviously, I think, that's where I started following some of your work. And this whole transformation, when you go, a benefit of analog is it's relatively secure. Obviously, when you make it digital, the cyber threat surface totally changes as well. So that's something also that we're starting to think a lot about.
Michael, talk a little bit about the world that you could envision happening here. Obviously, this analog to digital conversion, important because it can improve, I think, response times, but also can start to enable ubiquity of devices to call 911 services as well. Talk a little bit about your vision for that.
Yeah, I had a partner that gave this to me, Dave. So if you don't mind, I'd almost like I have this prop that I think summarizes this well. So if you will, this challenge a little bit is like this hourglass. Like the top of the hourglass, right? We have something like 20 billion connected devices out there, right? Like this building I'm in, it knows if it's on fire. My Apple Watch knows if I'm having a heart attack. Your car knows if it's in a crash, right? And 911, it's not like 911's in the Stone Age, Dave, right? Like they have tablets and smartphones and all these sophisticated computerized systems. But between the two, if you can see it here, is this drip, drip, drip of data. And it is this bottleneck, Dave, which was 1 out of 3 fatalities last year in the United States. It was roughly 1 million Americans that faced some sort of critical life-threatening emergency, and they were stuck in this bottleneck. And it is also hundreds of billions of spent, right? And so what we've been working on is trying to figure out, like, how can we convert this 1930s analog-based system into this rich data platform? So, that's taken a while. We went to grad school to work on it back in 2013 through 2015. My co-founder was doing his PhD at MIT. I was at Harvard at the time and spun out at the end of 2015, raised capital. And so today we link about 600 million devices into 15,000 first responder agencies. And so we're supporting, most data across the North American 911 system. And what that means now, right, is 911, they're able to actually know who you are, where you are, in some cases, your pre-existing health conditions, or to the point that you were making, actually even shifting the paradigm from having to call to letting the building detect an emergency, instantly get that data into the fire department, roll first responders to the scene, knowing that, hey, 4 people are trapped in the northwest corner. This convergence of data is just going to completely transform how we think about emergency response and those 250 million lives a year that are on the line in this country alone, Dave.
Ever since I saw the Apple commercial where the gentleman fell off his bike, he dialed 911, and it transferred a lot of the health data from his wearable. I now wear a wearable, and I also now have a wrist cam that enables me to live stream so that we're able to send even more data from the Apple device or the wearable in the event of an emergency over to an emergency call center. The art of the possible is amazing here as we start to digitize this, and we can create faster response times, more accurate locations, have the right service show up at the right time. It's an amazing opportunity, I think, that RapidSOS is doing to really help not just save lives, but save cost and really create an environment that we can create to enable a much safer community for all.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up the example of video, right? So obviously video's become ubiquitous. Like you and I are actually on different sides of the country right now. And yet here we are having this, great conversation. And we're able to even live stream it out to, thousands, millions of people. And so 911, again, when you call, they don't even know your name, right, Dave? And it's extraordinary how well the system works despite of that. But that's a testament to the people, not the infrastructure. But let's just take video as an example. So it turns out there was a study in Nature recently where it found that there's roughly a universal language data transmission rate. It's about 38 bits per second. So you and I having this conversation here, we're transmitting information back and forth about 38 bits per second. So compare that to taking one photo on your smartphone. Let's say a low-res photo, 5 megapixels. So if you compare the data encoded in each of those, one 5 megapixel camera image is the equivalent of 12 days, Dave, of continuous talk time. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that data mean? It means we're sending the whole fire brigade to a 4-alarm fire rather than a police car, right? It means we arrive on scene to that person who's in anaphylactic shock, and we know immediately how to administer aid, right? Minutes and seconds matter in an emergency. And the result is obviously the potential to save tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of lives a year. So I'm super fired up about that data revolution as it finally intersects this last area of really analog infrastructure.
Michael, talk a little bit about it now from physical to cyber and what we can do from responses. And what I mean by that is now we start to see or predict that there's a physical threat occurring, an active shooter, an accident, a wildfire, there's 911 calls coming in. In the cyber world, in the security world, what could start to happen? What's the art of the possible here in terms of responses that could be created by a platform like yours?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways that we think about that convergence, right? So the first is the ability for kind of the physical security world, right, to intersect with the cybersecurity world. And I think you're increasingly seeing, right, this new breed of executives that have to think about this multifaceted set of threats against their organization, right? So you're now seeing chief security officers at large multinational companies that need to kind of think both ways, right? And so you have, these security operations centers, SOCs and NOCs that are standing up, GSOCs, that now have to kind of interface with all that information stream through both systems. So that's certainly an area where we're integrating, and we're actually seeing kind of our sorts of the types of large organizations that are now using our services are also thinking holistically about that threat environment. The other thing that I think is really interesting is 911 traditionally has been, not well kind of funded or taken care of from a federal government standpoint. It's really been left to the municipalities, so local law enforcement, local fire EMS, right? We're talking about approximately 70,000 first responder agencies, Dave, across the United States. So you can imagine, right, the challenge for a small town in Iowa or Indiana where I grew up, right, needing to have the level of cyber sophistication to go up against the level of threat and attack that we're starting to see that, you've been helping to raise awareness about across your career. And so that's something that we're also starting to really think about is we switch from analog to digital. How are we protecting our nation's first responders? And really, is we think about the front lines for home security in the United States. It is the 250 million people that are accessing help in the moments when they need it most. Our 911 system. We have some sort of attack on this country. It is 911 is going to be how Americans get the help they need in those critical moments. So there is absolutely this convergence of these two worlds, and it's something that we're thinking a lot about. So,
Michael, I've always had a dream here, and I think that dream's starting to come true. A little bit later, I'm going to be interviewing the founder and CEO of DataMiner. DataMiner does a lot of physical risk intelligence to help predict what risks are occurring. DataMiner can pass RapidSOS data. We can dial 911 through any type of device. We can get responders there faster, save lives. We could create a cyber response playbook that helps like lock doors or create video feeds or create more actionable decision support data, creating a faster response and a more accurate response. If we can start to close that whole loop of physical risk to emergency center to cyber response, we're going to be in a much safer and secure world. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're one of the heroes. Thank you for building your company. Congratulations on all of that, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me.